Yeah, thank you for this kindest introduction, and thank you everyone who are related to the organization of this very important event from both conceptual and technical sides of this. Yeah, so the topic of my short report. So first of all, I would share the screen. So, sorry, host should enable me to share the screen. Yeah, but I will start now. So the topic of my brief report is called Exodus from the Post-Soviet Condition, Artist Cinema after the Maidan Revolution. Sorry? Now everything is fine, thank you. So,
great, we can see it.
Yes, so it is called Exodus from the Post-Soviet Condition, Artist Cinema after the Maidan Revolution. As far as this section is called Art in Ukraine Now, I would start with this report, considering how this now may be understood. In other words, it can be really exciting to express the following question: what is now for art in Ukraine these days? That place, which is called In Ukraine, shimmers at the intersection of the most amazing temporalities of social and political processes. It is a place that has been in a state of transit from historical socialism to liberal democracy for 30 years. At the same time, this place is already integrated into global social transformations, such as the collapse of the public sphere, the emergence of new precarious and hybrid forms of work and labor, the formation of effective governing, which actually allowed the showman to become a president. Also, active participation of outsourced workers from Ukraine in global markets, both harvesting and as specialist in IT industry. The geological layers of this place and bodies who populate it are as follows: scars from Stalinist and late Soviet state orthopedia, weak dissident traces leading to the independence of Ukraine, huge crisis in 90s, early capitalist sheiks, two democratic revolutions, and traces of bullets and explosions. So the issue of dismembering may be also explored as something which may appear in the field of a lack of institutional or institutionalized memory. And I'm pretty sure that Ukraine is the case of such kind of dismembering. I propose to observe some of the artistic practices focused on the paradoxical freezing of this diversity of social and political processes in a moving image, the documentation of variability, or, as we will become clear later, the desynchronization of the totality of the imperial gaze, which incorporates through media and visual practices in particular, Eastern European context, as well as Ukrainian one, into the universal or so-called universal highway to the kingdom of market reason. So after the Maidan revolution, several practices appeared in this field. I should probably name some of the authors who work with artist cinema. such as Mykola Ridny, Dana Kavelina, Yuri Gritsina, Olexii Radinsky, Fantastic Little Splash, that is a collective from Dnipro, and many others. So today I'm going to talk about two films, only two of them, but still I think that you can somehow you can be sure that they're quite representative in this case. So Fantastic Little Splash, the art collective from the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro, works with the substance, with this really diverse and unstable substance, which may be called now in Ukraine. So I'm still like speaking about this phenomenon. A film called Concrete and Unclear is an artistic study, so to speak, of the materiality of the images surrounding the unfinished building of the huge Soviet Paros Hotel. Yeah, so here you can see the screenshot from the film. This hotel was suspended in 1989. During the Maidan, the hotel was painted yellow and blue, which is a gestural crystallization of a special collective affect that prevailed at that time, namely something between hope and despair. Neoliberalism, the grueling long war in eastern Ukraine, the political crisis and patriarchal reaction provoked by the Russian invasion in 2014 have linked the image of the Paros Hotel to what Italian philosopher Franco Biffa Berardi calls terrorism of the 21st century, that is suicides. It was this building, which is unfinished, like just unfinished building, was used for suicides for a couple of years. And in the end, the concrete and unclear materiality of the image of the building found its place in the Fantastic Little Splash films, which I invite you to watch a teaser of this film. So I will ask somebody who are responsible for technical things to show the video. As it is called Concrete and Unclear.
Зручність і краса. Майбутнє Дніпропетровське. Гармонія і поезія. Сонце і простір. Зручність і краса. Таким буде місто 2000 року.
В настоящее время большинство из нас поражены симптомами демонтажа. Все вокруг нас, окружающий мир, общество, сознание и вместе с тем все в нас, ценности, значения, решения должны при этом распасться. Но точно так же наблюдается много симптомов для начала альтернативного проецирования.
Yes, thank you. So, the other filmic practice which I'm going to discuss now is following. The plastic excess of material that has to be dealt with now in Ukraine, whatever that may mean, is reconstructed as a form of perceptual experience of looking into the window of an intercity train in Olexii circulation. The raw everyday visual data appears in the shot, which, according to Ukrainian cultural critic Justina Kravchuk, is the gaze of Angelus Novus, the fragments of Soviet past, the recent coming weird capitalist development, the scattered fragments of society which were dispelled through all over the Kyiv by neoliberal reforms. So I would also ask you to show the other video, the other one. So you mean you have only one video?
Is there more? Are there more videos?
There should be the other one, which is called Circulation.
I think we saw Circulation, but it was very short. It was only about 15 seconds long.
Oh, yeah, I see. So thank you.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the question is, what is assembled by these works, these artworks, if Western visual culture encodes arrays of images and iconographic practices into historical chains in the cultural, political, and social imagination? As you have already understood from the title of this report, I call this relationship an exodus from the post-Soviet condition. Unlike dozens of researchers who limit the concept, this concept to the Eastern European context, the intellectual historian whose research project is deeply rooted in the paradoxical and problematic areas of Western aesthetic culture, Susan Buck-Moss states that the post-Soviet condition is a global one. It finds its origins in the Western cultural hegemony in the form of Soviet modernization. The post-Soviet state is the state of Western culture, the last breath of universal history as a specific project of this Western culture. Universal history that emerged after the end of the Cold War. Today, it seems appropriate that this state has led to a global extractivist consensus around Ukraine, as well as Georgia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Chechnya. These territories, which in principle remain outside NATO-type international military alliances, still remain to be so-called neutral zones or immature student of major geopolitical players. However, paradoxically, these lessons are constant wars for extraction, which Europe and the United States have never faced. So, Susan Buckmore writes, globalization refers to the recognition of the shared time. There is no part of global space that is advanced in time, none that is backward. We are all in this time that is both transient and universal. We share the same contingent history. We have equal rights to determine our common future. In the post-industrial age or post-Fordist age, and especially after anti- and alter-globalist movements, which are they are a background for the Maidan revolution in 2013, and also as well as after the further social transformations. Post-operaist philosopher Paulo Virna conceptualized that kind of practicing a singular but not universal common future as an exodus. Exodus, which is both play and research, like practical, social, practical research, which is highly politicized and socially engaged, but which hasn't any idea of becoming or constructing a new state, a new monopoly of political decisions. So we also may speak of nowadays Ukrainian resistance as a practices of exodus from war, even if exodus from war means military operations or in order to defend the Ukrainian territory. So common future occurs in our case as Eisenstein's third meaning. I would refer to the Soviet avant-garde filmmaker because of his great impact on cinematic practices here in Ukraine and Eastern Europe at all. In his theory of cinematic montage, sensing, I quote, sensing that our common ground is to be found less in the convergence of these images than in the unbridgeable space that holds them apart. But in spite of Eisenstein's Soviet enlightened authoritarian condition, and here come the conclusions. In a state of post-Soviet condition, and especially in a state of exodus from the post-Soviet condition, the constellation of contemporary art in its articulation as socially engaged practice has already invaded that space which holds images apart. That space was introduced by one important feature of socially engaged art, which is common both for it and latest artistic practices. I mean the condition that art discards the audience in order to explore another form of agency, that is, the form of a participant. However, in the field of images, in its very state of effective governance, a participant is not just an individual subject or person with his or her state of mind. A participant is a subjectivity which was introduced by the neoliberalist market and digitalized by politics as a trans-individual social, political, and labor subjectivity. This is a contemporary, that is global, condition of contemporary art. Of contemporary art in Ukraine in particular. It is related to Soviet heritage, among other things. referring to the films, once again, to the images that are the unstable containers of abstract and yet potential diverse social relations. It is a substance, not humans, because, as it is obvious today, Ukrainians cannot be served with human rights by international institutions. So it is a substance exploring its own agency to be formed not as a stage of linear, universal historical flux, but as a multiplicity of fluxes, including ones which were unofficial or unfinished in a Soviet cultural project. Astonishingly, exodus from the post-Soviet condition is rather trans than anti-Soviet. Also, these fluxes today may be cut off with brutal military violence. Instead of talking about identities of individuals in a pluralistic way, I would rather think about agency that appears when a potential, I would use this actually old-fashioned Spinozist term, a potential of people's bodies hold it together in a common action may overlap a potential of moving images and trans-Soviet imaginations in general. And in terms of agency, there is a strict mutual relations between political aim to embargo Russian gas and oil, that is, to rearrange the planetary extractivist order, and multiplicity of practices of becoming trans-Soviet, especially if these practices are related to moving image art. So thank you for your attention.